What's up, everyone? Check out the Comic Outlaw on YouTube. Drop us a like, a subscribe, or just hit us up, period. And I hope you're ready, because one of my favorite villains, one of my favorite Fantastic Four villains of all time, the first appearance of the one, the only, the Super Skrull. And just if you haven't seen the episode on the Skrulls that I did, basically Reed tricked them, the invading force, into going home, saying there was a bunch of superheroes, basically hoodwinked them, and now they're back for revenge. And we're leaving off basically where the Fantastic Four had just beaten Doom. And of course, the media is covering that. The Fantastic Four at this point are semi celebrities. They're very famous to a point, like they're seen in stores. They're not rock star famous, but they get recognized. And of course, Ben and Thing have their little spat. And Reed is actually working on a new kind of ship, a rocket. Yeah, because Reed does a lot of different experiments. He works on a lot of different stuff. So Reed always has something cooking, including a new fantastic car, which looks awesome, by the way. The Skulls, though, have other plans. Due to their last defeat, they're not taking this lying down, and they hire, or they basically get someone, a guard, a warrior called the Super Skrull. And the interesting thing about him is they've played with his chemistry. They've enhanced him, his shape-shifting ability to a higher level. He's able to stretch like Mr. Fantastic. He has the strength of Thing. He has the powers of the Human Torch. And also the invisibility of Sue Storm. He's all four members of the Fantastic Four rolled into one. And look how he simply just crushes that. I mean, this guy is ready, primed, and able to take the Fantastic Four down. And the Skrulls are feeling pretty hopeful at this point. But meanwhile, the Fantastic Four, is out shopping, doing what they do, And it's funny because Thing is trying to get a bowling ball, some kind of semblance of normal life. He can't find one he can put his fingers into. So he just does what he usually does and crushes it and goes on his merry way. And this is just typical Thing. And meanwhile, the other members of the Fantastic Four are getting mobbed. And how they do not recognize Thing in a trench coat, scarf, and sunglasses, I do not know. But Reed kind of stretches himself out, and Thing pulls them out of the crowd. And I guess there was popular superheroes, it's one of the first. The Avengers weren't really popular. The X-Men weren't really popular. But they got called into some trouble. A Skrull is downtown declaring himself king. So the Fantastic Four bounce off, fly off, head off, or just basically turn invisible. Now, Super Skrull is just so defiant. He just does not care. He's declaring himself ruler of this world, claiming it for the Skrulls, just not taking any guff from anyone. And he's throwing people around left and right, Truly full of arrogance and ready to conquer the Fantastic Four. But the Fantastic Four has been feeling pretty cocky themselves, They've had a lot of victories. But anyways, the Human Torch kind of does what he does. Hothead kind of flies off. And the Super Skrull uses his torch powers to kind of turn the air around him into hardened carbon. Now, this is back where the Human Torch had a lot of different powers, an odd power set, I should say. But anyways, he manages to extinguish Torch. Reed catches him in time. And Thing is doing his changing act from his trench coat, which I'm surprised nobody noticed. The big rock monster wearing a trench coat, is pretty easy to spot. But anyways, Thing is trying to get into the fight. Meanwhile, Mr. Fantastic tangles him up. And he starts using the invisible power to expand and expand and expand. And Reed just can't expand anymore, so he has to let him go. And this is the interesting thing about Reed's power set. He hasn't been unfrazzled yet like this. It is fascinating. And of course, him and a Super Skrull get into a little stretching match. And Reed makes a hammer. He's able to just pull a rock out with the stretchy power and able to block it. Thing comes out of nowhere. And of course, not thinking the Skrull is strong at all, he takes a shot at him. But the Skrull is ready and hits right on back. And this is interesting. Since he is a shapeshifter, he turns his head into a battering ram. And just goes full ram on Benjamin Grimm, knocking him out. Because he's still using his power and his shapeshifting power. He's not as good as he will be, but he's kind of learning how to use these in combination. This is his first time with all these different powers, And now he's chasing after Reed, trying to shoot him down as Reed does his best imitation of a flying squirrel. Meanwhile, Johnny hits him with a big blast, sort of blinding him for the moment. Johnny gets cocky and goes after him, and he makes a flame chain. A chain made of flame. And kind of entangles Johnny, and Reed pulls him back, and they're trying to figure out what exactly they're going to do. And they make a temporary retreat, and Super Skrull is invisible and making himself a firebow. Like I said, he's starting to learn how to use these powers in combination. Later on, he'll get much, much better at it. And this makes the Fantastic Four retreat. They go back into the Baxter building, and this is where arrogance comes into play with the Skrull. Instead of finishing them off, he decides to let them quake in their boots for a day before he comes and finishes them, not knowing that that will give Reed Richards the time that he needs to build an invention to counteract the rays of the... See, he's getting his power through rays right now that are like sent down from the ship, instead of it ended up kind of like occurring naturally later on. And so they build a device to shut it down, and they meet the Skrull on the deserted island. The Super Skrull and the Fantastic Four begin to go at it. And yes, he also has hypnotism, which is interesting. He's able to use that. He ends up blinding Thing. He ends up taking out Torch. He ends up kind of doing the same to Reed, as he's throwing up a blockade. Sue, using her invisible power, gets close enough to him to put that little device on him. And what happens is it shorts out his powers. He has no access to the incredible powers he had before. And so they just throw him in a cave, and they seal him up for now, until they could get him into a proper prison. And the Fantastic Four wonder when the next invasion from the Skrulls is coming, and what they'll be sending next. But we'll find out next time, won't we? And I'll catch you on the flip side. Later.